Corporal James Elric sat near the edge of a broken wall, his back against the cold stone. Smoke rose in the distance, and the red sky of Varec 9 burned like fire. It had been 3 days since he last saw another human. His squad was gone. Maybe dead. Maybe captured. He didn't know. And he was too tired to care. The war had gone on for 5 years. Humans and the Craggy Alliance were fighting over this dusty planet full of strange minerals. Command said the minerals could power ships for 100 years. James didn't care about minerals. He cared about staying alive. His hands shook as he opened his last ration pack. Inside was a dry protein bar and a pouch of water. Not enough, but it would keep him going for 1 more day. He looked around silent ruins, broken metal, burned flags. No movement. He took a bite. Then he heard it. A small sound. Like rubble moving. Very soft, almost like someone crawling. James froze. He grabbed his rifle and slowly turned toward the noise. His heart beat faster. Was it a craggy soldier? A wild creature? Something worse? He waited. Then he saw her. She was hiding behind a cracked wall. Thin. Small. Covered in dirt and cuts. Her skin was blue-gray, not human. Her eyes were wide, glowing softly in the dark. She wasn't armed. She wasn't wearing armor. Just a torn cloth wrapped around her body. She was shaking. James didn't move. She stepped closer. He raised his gun, just a little. A warning. But she didn't run. She didn't scream. She looked at the food in his hand. Then slowly, she reached out one small hand, trembling. She was hungry. James stared at her. She was Xenary. Not craggy, but one of the native species of Varec 9. His commanders had warned them about the locals. Don't trust them, they said. They'll sell you to the enemy for a few scraps of metal. But she didn't look like a threat. She looked like a starving child. James didn't lower his gun. Not yet. He didn't speak her language, and she didn't speak his. But in that quiet moment, they both understood something. Hunger didn't need words. She took another step forward, pointing again at the ration pack. Her eyes didn't show hate. Only need. And fear. James remembered something then, his little sister back on Earth. Before the war. During the food shortages. She had looked the same way. Pale. Weak. Afraid to ask for more food because there wasn't any. His fingers loosened. He lowered the gun. Slowly, carefully, he broke the protein bar in half and held out a piece. The girl's eyes widened. She didn't rush. She moved slowly, carefully. Like an animal unsure if a trap was about to snap shut. Her fingers brushed his hand as she took the food. Then she stepped back. She ate quickly but with small bites. She hadn't eaten in days, maybe weeks. When she finished, she looked up at him again. Her mouth moved, but the words were in her own language. Soft. Almost like singing. James couldn't understand. But he nodded. She sat down a few feet away. Close enough to share the fire. Far enough to run if she needed to. For the rest of the night, they sat in silence. He didn't sleep much. Neither did she. But they didn't run. They didn't fight. And for the first time in weeks, James felt something strange in his chest. Hope. Maybe this war wasn't just about minerals. Maybe it wasn't about power or flags or orders. Maybe it was about people. Living things. Even if they didn't look the same. Even if they didn't speak the same words. The next morning, when James woke up, the girl was gone. His heart sank. But then he saw it, something placed near the fire. A small bundle of leaves. Inside were roots. Mushrooms. And a piece of dried meat. She had brought him food. James didn't know what to think. He stared at the bundle of food the alien girl had left. It was neatly wrapped in cloth, probably torn from her own clothing. The roots and mushrooms looked strange, but he recognized the dried meat. It was from a local animal. She had hunted for him. He hadn't asked for help. He hadn't expected kindness. But now, after weeks of nothing but blood, smoke, and fear, a girl from an enemy planet had brought him a gift. He didn't eat it right away. Not because he thought it was poisoned, he didn't believe that, but because he felt something strange. Like guilt. Back on Earth, aliens were stories. Threats. Monsters in war briefings. But now, in this dead city, one of them had shared his fire, and then brought him food. That didn't feel like an enemy. Later that day, she returned. James was sitting in the same place, rifle across his lap, watching the ruins. She stepped out from behind the same wall as before, hands empty, eyes low. When he didn't move, she slowly walked over and sat beside the fire again. A little closer this time. They didn't speak. They couldn't. But she made small gestures with her hands. Tapped her chest. Then pointed at herself. "Rhea," she said, slowly. James blinked. "Rhea." She nodded. Tapped her chest again. "Rhea." He nodded. "James." She tried to repeat it. "J.A., mess." Her voice was light, musical, different from human speech. But it was close enough. That was how it started. For the next few days, they met at the same place. She brought him roots and strange herbs. He shared what was left of his rations. Slowly, they learned little things. Words. Names for food. The word for fire. The word for water. He learned her language by watching her hands, her face, her voice. And she learned his. One night, he pointed at the sky, where Earth's sun would have been, far across the galaxy. "Home," he said. She looked up. Then pointed to a broken tower behind them. "Home," she said. It wasn't much. But it was enough. Every day, James felt stronger. The herbs she gave him helped with his wounds. The roots gave him energy. She showed him how to crush leaves to stop infection. He showed her how to clean a wound with fire-sterilized water. They were teaching each other. Two soldiers from different worlds. No weapons. Just knowledge. But peace didn't last long. One afternoon, as they were building a small shelter together from scrap metal, James heard the sound he feared most. Engines. Craggy patrol. The enemy army was close. Rhea froze. Her skin seemed to darken in fear. She grabbed his hand and pulled him behind a pile of rubble. James looked up, eyes wide, heart pounding. He reached for his rifle, but she stopped him. She shook her head and pointed toward a hidden passage beneath a collapsed building. She had a hiding place. Without a word, she pulled him into the narrow tunnel. It was dark, damp, barely wide enough for them to crawl. But it was safe. They waited in silence as the craggy patrol passed above them. Heavy footsteps. Metal boots. Weapons ready. One wrong sound and they were dead. James held his breath. So did Rhea. The footsteps faded. Then silence. They had survived. When they climbed out of the tunnel hours later, the sun was gone. Rhea looked tired. Pale. James knew she had risked everything to hide him. If the Craggy had found her helping a human, they would have killed her. She didn't do it for rewards. She did it because she cared. That night, James finally asked the question he had been thinking for days. He looked at her and said, slowly, "Why help me?" Rhea didn't answer with words. Instead, She reached into her small bag and pulled out a broken photo. It showed a young Xenari child. Sick. Weak. Lying on a dirty floor. Rhea pointed to the child. Then to herself. James understood. She had lost someone too. She knew pain. She knew hunger. And when she saw it in him, she couldn't walk away. In war, they were supposed to be enemies. But in that quiet space between battles, they were just two people trying to survive. And for the first time since the war began, James stopped feeling like a soldier. He started feeling human again. The next morning was too quiet. James woke up before the sun rose. The air was cold. The sky over Varec 9 looked darker than usual. He sat up, listening. No wind. No birds. No engines. Just silence. Rhea wasn't there. She always arrived early, carrying food or herbs, always smiling with her soft, tired eyes. But today, she was gone. James waited for hours. He didn't eat. He didn't move. He only stared at the place where she always appeared from behind that cracked wall. His thoughts were loud in his head. Maybe the Craggy found her. Maybe she was hurt. Or worse. Suddenly, a voice called from his earpiece. Crackling. Static. Then a message. This is command. Corporal Elric, respond. We received your signal. Extraction point confirmed. 16 hours. James couldn't believe it. For weeks, he had tried to contact them. Every signal had failed. But now, they had heard him. They were coming. He could finally go home. But his first thought wasn't joy. It was Rhea. She had saved him. Fed him. Healed his wounds. Protected him when he couldn't protect himself. He owed her everything. And now, if he left, he might never see her again. He stood up, packed his gear, and ran toward the old tower. The one she had called home. The building was half destroyed. Metal beams hung like broken bones. James climbed through the rubble, searching, calling her name. Rhea? Rhea, where are you? Then he heard a sound. A soft cry. Like someone in pain. He followed it. Down a dark stairway, into the lower level, he found her. She was lying on the ground, her leg trapped under a heavy beam. Her face was pale. Blood on her hands. Her eyes opened when she saw him. She smiled. Even in pain, she smiled. James dropped his bag and ran to her side. He tried lifting the beam, but it was too heavy. He pulled with all his strength. Metal scraped against stone. Rhea cried out in pain. Still, she didn't stop him. After minutes of struggle, he finally moved the beam enough for her to slide free. Her leg was broken. She couldn't walk. He looked at her, breathing hard. We have to go. Now. She shook her head slowly. No, you go, she said, pointing to the sky. Home. He stared at her. I'm not leaving you. She looked away. She knew what would happen. If she slowed him down, he might miss the extraction. If he carried her, they would both risk dying. It wasn't logical to stay. But James didn't care about logic anymore. He cared about her. So, he made his choice. He lifted her onto his back, carefully, her arms around his neck. She was light. Too light. He could feel how weak she was. He carried her through the ruins, across cracked roads and burned fields. For hours, they moved toward the signal point. His legs burned. His wounds reopened. But he didn't stop. Not even once. When they finally reached the extraction zone, the sun was almost gone. A small human transport ship hovered above the ground, engines humming. A medic waved him over. James collapsed near the ship, lowering Rhea to the ground. The soldiers stared at her. Weapons raised. One of them shouted, "What the hell is that?" James stood in front of her, arms out. "She saved me," he said. "She's not the enemy." They hesitated. Then the medic stepped forward. "She's injured. Badly. If we leave her, she'll die." The commanding officer looked at James. "You trust her?" James nodded. "With my life." There was a long pause. Then the officer lowered his weapon. "All right. Bring her." Inside the ship, James sat beside her. Rhea looked up at him, eyes filled with tears. Not from pain but from something else. She didn't know what would happen next. Would the humans lock her away? Would they fear her? But James held her hand. "You're safe now," he whispered. For the first time, Rhea closed her eyes and slept. The transport ship flew high above Varec 9, leaving behind the war, the ruins, and everything James had known for the past 2 years. He sat beside Rhea, who lay on a medical bed. Her leg was wrapped in bandages. Monitors beeped softly. A human doctor had given her medicine and was watching her closely, but her body still looked fragile. The soldiers inside the ship kept their distance. Some stared. Some whispered. James didn't care. He stayed close to her the whole way, making sure she was calm. She was awake now, but quiet. She held his hand like it was the only thing she trusted. Maybe it was. When they arrived at the base, the doctors wanted to take her away. "Alien protocols," they said. "She's not human. We don't know if she's dangerous." James refused. He told them everything: how she found him, how she shared her food, how she healed his wounds, how she saved his life more than once. He spoke until his voice cracked. He made it clear, without her, he would be dead. The base commander listened. Then asked the question James feared most. "Why should we care?" James stood straight and looked him in the eye. "Because she cared about me when no one else did." Silence. Then something surprising happened. A second voice spoke, one of the medics who had treated Rhea. "Sir, her biology is compatible with some of our medicines. She could teach us things. Help with the wounded. Her knowledge might save lives." The commander gave a slow nod. "Fine. She stays. But under protection." For the next few weeks, Rhea remained at the base. She didn't speak much. She stayed close to James, only trusting him. But slowly, she started to learn. She asked questions. She helped in the medical unit. The other soldiers watched her with curiosity. Some were afraid. Others were respectful. Then something even bigger happened. James sent a message. Not just to command but to the public. He wrote a full report. A letter. A story. He called it More Than Enemies. In it, he explained how Rhea had saved him, not with weapons or power, but with kindness. How the war had made them blind. How one alien girl taught him what peace really meant. The story spread. First among soldiers. Then across colonies. Then back to Earth. People started asking questions. Are all Xenari like her? What if we were wrong? The war didn't stop overnight. But something started to change. Small teams were sent to speak with Xenari tribes. Some said no. But others listened. Rhea helped translate. James stood beside her, every time. Slowly, the hate began to melt. Not all at once. But enough. 2 years later, the first peace agreement was signed. Not between governments. But between people. James and Rhea stood together at the ceremony. She now wore a translator on her neck, allowing her to speak human words. She looked stronger. Happier. still quiet but no longer afraid. When asked what made her help the human soldier, Rhea answered with a soft smile. Because he was hungry. And alone. Just like I once was. James looked at her. She had saved his life. But more than that, she had saved his soul. Epilogue. Years later, James returned to Earth. Not as a soldier, but as a writer. He published his story. More Than Enemies became a book, then a documentary, then a message of hope. Rhea chose to stay on Earth with him. She became a healer, working in refugee centers, helping both humans and aliens. Some people still judged her. Some still feared her. But most didn't. Because they saw what she had done. And how one act of kindness, just one, had changed everything. James never forgot the moment she reached for his food. And he never forgot what he learned after that. Sometimes, the enemy isn't who you think it is. And sometimes, peace begins with a broken ration bar, and a choice to care. 5 years had passed since James and Rhea left Varec 9. The war was over. Not because one side had won, but because both sides had finally chosen something else. Peace. It hadn't been easy. Many people had resisted. Some refused to believe that Xenari or Craggy could ever be trusted. But the story of James and Rhea, the human soldier and the alien girl who became allies, kept spreading. Schools taught their story to children. Leaders used it as proof that understanding was possible. And in quiet places across the stars, humans and aliens slowly began to build a new world. James and Rhea never looked for fame. They never stood on big stages or gave long speeches. Instead, they worked in silence, side by side. James became a peacekeeper. He helped soldiers return home and find new purpose. Rhea continued as a healer. She worked in war-torn zones, where wounds ran deeper than skin. They built a small home near the ocean, on one of Earth's greenest islands. It wasn't big. Just quiet. Peaceful. With books, tools, and a fire pit where they sat every evening. Sometimes they spoke of the past. Sometimes they stayed silent. But always, they remembered. One night, under a clear sky full of stars, Rhea asked a question. Do you think we were meant to meet? James looked up. I think, we were meant to change each other. She smiled. We did. Years later, a statue was built on Varec 9. Not of a general. Not of a leader. But of a young soldier and an alien girl, sitting by a fire, sharing food. At the bottom, the words were simple. It began with hunger. It ended with hope. Visitors came from every world to see it. Humans. Xenari. Even Craggy. Some came to learn. Some came to remember. Some just stood in silence. Because they knew the truth. War ends with paper and ink, but peace begins in the heart. And it only takes two people brave enough to see each other as more than enemies to change everything. The end.